Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up with Gilbert Clark, Director at Meridian Mining earlier today. We've seen some high-grade numbers coming out in press releases recently and wanted to see what is happening there. He talks us through those. They're looking to expand the envelope with some twin drilling and some pretty exciting plans for the rest of this year with the money they've got from the 2.4 million in warrants that they've seen come through recently. If you want our thoughts and opinions on the company, the conversation, and indeed Gilbert himself, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com. We also love your feedback, so do give us a like, leave your thoughts below. We'll get back to everyone. And if you want to see precisely what we talked about, take a look below. Gilbert, how are you, sir?
Matt, I'm very well. Thanks again for having me.
Well, I felt compelled, having seen some of these press releases and some of these high grades. My timing is perfect. How are you, first of all? All good?
Yeah, I'm very well. I get my second vaccine shot next Monday, and I'm scheduled to go down to Brazil probably, I think second week in August I'll be down in Brazil. So
good news. You know you're not allowed to call it the Brazil variant now, don't you?
No, well, whatever. My agent, our CEO, he's been on site now for about 10 days or so he's in the field. Just onwards and upwards.
Onwards and upwards. Okay. I was referring to in Britain here. I know you're on the continent now, having left us, voted with your feet, that we've been assigned these Greek letters for all the variants. So we don't want to offend anyone. We've gone very, very liberal over here. You made the right decision to move to the south coast of France. We should talk. I want to talk about these press releases, but give us that 1 minute overview for people new to the story, walking into what it is that you're doing with copper and gold.
With the project, well, we're just delivering. The story hasn't changed since we acquired the project back in signed for it in November. What we're doing is we're delivering what we said we're going to do: confirmation drilling, expanding drilling, and confirming that essentially this main focus of Cabaçal mine is basically intact, unmined, and at incredibly shallow depths. And it's confirming to us the ideal geometry for a future open pit operation.
Okay, but you're chasing copper gold VMS. That's the idea. When you set, just again, remind us, what was it that you thought you had when you picked up this asset?
Look. When we picked this asset up, it was really confirmed to me what it was. It was an entire VMS camp, essentially de-risked by an oil major in the hands of a small cap junior. And we were going to go through a period of resource development, exploration success that was actually already predetermined. We knew what we were going to get. So then from my perspective of managing our shareholders' equities and deploying their capital, my risk just went down. So I went into this thinking, okay, I have a low risk, mid-tier size asset in a small cap junior, and we're going to deliver strong equity growth associated with a small cap junior discovery, but underpinned by a risk profile that you usually associate with a production asset.
Yeah, but it came with a bit of baggage. You had to unpick a few things. You had to restructure the company, restructure the registry, all of those things too, which I thought was interesting. And people wanting to understand that, well, I'll put a link below to those interviews because I think that's important to understand. But what I want to talk about today is the process that you're going through now to do that unpicking, because these high-grade numbers don't just suddenly appear by some random exercise. So what have you been doing since we spoke 6-7 weeks ago?
Okay. Well, since we last spoke, we've done a couple of things. We've been reviewing the results of the geophysics. Okay, and that's identified a very unique geophysical signature that's associated with the copper gold mineralisation. And then when we've gone and been drilling outside or inside of the known drill pattern that was done by BP in the 1980s, it keeps confirming the geophysical signature with the mineralisation. So we're going through that process of saying a mineralisation is correct, geophysics is correct, Now, how do we take that information and expand it, create wealth out of it? And that's been a big success. So we went into this thinking, okay, we have a central focus of about 1.8 kilometres in strike length. And through the information of drilling, geophysics, soil sampling, actually recovering soil data from the archives of Rio Tinto, all of a sudden it's gone from 1.8 kilometres to 3.7 kilometres in strike length. And this is just one of the focuses of within the camp scale asset. So then we went into that thing, okay, we're going to prove up this central asset, and all of a sudden it's going to be twice as big, and it's extending outside of where we first thought it was. So we're just exceeding our expectations. And at the same time, the information, we then took that information and we reviewed the historical airborne geophysics. And all of a sudden, 20 kilometres to the south, we picked up a direct analogy to the Cabaçal geophysical response called the Alamo, which is 4 kilometres long. And yet we thought, oh, great, look, we've done something. And it was a BP anomaly that was directly down long strike from an open copper gold soil anomaly. So the project just keeps delivering what you'd expect to find in a camp scale VMS assets. They're just multiple pods of hydrothermal alteration containing metals. But unlike, say, in Canada or Australia or elsewhere, where they're now mining these things down at 3,000 metres, the Loranda gold mine, we're finding all this at surface.
Yeah, I mean, really shallow. Really shallow.
Really shallow. Yeah. We've got gosons.
But that's why I was kind of intrigued by this. We're talking 20, 50 meters, from surface, which is nothing. Is that right? First of all,
yeah,
right. Okay. So I want to ask you about the way that you're going about this, because we've seen a bunch of companies do headline grabbing work, and we've seen companies that are going about it the right way and just trying to understand the scale of the opportunity. Did you go for the quick, easy wins, just kind of get noticed? Because obviously it's worked. You're up 45% from when we spoke 6 weeks ago.
No, we've talked about a few things. We're coming to this commodity cycle and everything's going to go up. And what we're doing is we're just going through a very structured process of building up a resource base. We're converting our historical knowledge by modern knowledge. So our independent person say, yep, I agree, the 400 holes and the 100 and something underground holes are now compliant because we've got the data. But what we're doing is we're now saying, okay, this isn't going to be 5 million tonnes, it's not going to be 10, 15, 20. We're targeting 35 to 45 million tonnes open pit. That's what we hope to do, touch wood. And we're just drilling. And what's most interesting actually for us is the most shallowest zone that we're dealing with, which is they're called the Eastern Copper Zone. That was never a focus for the BP or Rio because it didn't have the plus 3 gram gold. So this entire flat line, it'll be exploited from surface for gold, for gravity, of course, and then going to crystalline rock after 20 metres, so that's flotation. That's just completely undefined. We know that we're sort of subcrops. We've got an estimation what the tonnage is going to be, but imagine a scenario where you go into a reduction open pit in the first 5-10 years of your mine or your pit mine life. You're mining at no shallower than 50 metres flatline deposit. It's fantastic.
So just so to answer the question, so I'm really, really clear. You're going about this for long-term success because you're walking into this, EV thematic which is going on. You've got copper, you've got a bit of gold. Do you have enough money to do what you need to do?
Look, we've been, since the start, we've given a lot of information to the market, big news releases. It's going to cost a fortune, but we need to, because there's no historical data, we have to give quite extensive press releases so that our shareholders and potential shareholders got enough information to make an investment decision. But what that's replicated from our existing shareholders is that they've actually come and said, look, we like what you're doing. We're converting our warrants. Our brokers have been amazingly supportive. They've converted their broker units. And since the start of the year, cumulatively, now we've had over about 2.4 million Canadian that's come into the company in additional funds. So we're in a very strong position. We manage our equities, we manage our cash flow quite carefully because it's not our money, it's our shareholders. and we are in a very strong, so we're sort of maybe, nearly 30-40% of the way through the program now, and we're in a stronger cash position than when we started it. So that's really positive.
So how does this thing move forward though? Like 2.4 is, okay, it's great, non-dilatory in the sense that you don't have to go and raise any more capital. In the near term, you put out some nice high-grade numbers. Is it just more of the same, or how are you playing this?
Well, it's interesting. That really comes down to the geography of the deposit, because we're sort of dealing with, even though we're putting out these quite specky numbers, in the VMS system, we're actually dealing with the lower grade part of the system. And what we want to target is coming, because we've also acquired some new equipment, is an area called Cabaçal West, which we think is the traditional massive sulphide pile. And that's just to the north of this deposit. And they are typically the areas where you drill up, like 30, 40, 50 meters of massive sulfides. And that's your really high grade. That's your 3-4% direct copper plus gold and silver. So we've got that open pit scenario development, but we've also got the high grade down plunge extensions, which is your typical structure for a VMS. So we're going to go through that process. But again, we're not just going to sort of glory hole, director's hole into the project. What we'll do is we'll go through to base surface electromagnetic surveys, then we'll do downhole surveys, and we'll vector in onto the massive sulfides. We've actually, to de-risk that, we actually saw that our contractor's equipment was of a vintage that wasn't good. It created risk. We actually bought our own equipment from Australia, and now it's actually en route to site. So now we're developing that near-term large open pit scenario. But the future for us, June through to December, it really is just delivering those, the down plunge, targeting the massive sulphide pile.
But we haven't, I keep saying the word high grade, and so do you, but some of the numbers that are coming back are, exceptional over good intervals, good widths here. So the question to you is, how do you use that to your advantage? Because we've seen similar companies, in Asia and in North America, use that and bring in strategic partners, or go and raise a little bit more capital. Get it while you can. That's what I mean by how do you play this? Because you haven't really got a lot of cash. So where do you take it with the cash that you've got?
Well, this is a natural generation for successful small cap juniors, because you really start off with a strong retail base, and then you sort of migrate into some of the family offices, and then into the institutional investors. And since the start of the year, we've been really, really focused, working with a couple of groups in Canada and in London and England, to get exposure to the institutional investors. And what the most interesting part of that is, my background's in private equity. So when we're talking to these institutions, it's not sort of like the mining company promoting. It's almost a fund-to-fund investment discussion, because we're talking about risk and equity growth. So then what we have to then do is keep delivering the results. And when we go to test the markets, make sure we bring in those institutional investors into the capital table, because the capital, say a hypothetical capex on the program is X for a VMS deposit, and that's well within the capacity of the equity component for financing it, if you've got a strong institutional base to support you. So we're really looking at transforming that, bringing on more institutional investors into the balance sheet. We've had them, seen them buy a market. We've actually done a couple of crosses with some institutional investors. We are building up that base, and it's risk. It really comes down to risk. What institutional investors typically like to take a higher entry price, because they've got more risk, so lesser risk in their investment. But what we're presenting to them is the opportunity to have that discovery equity multiple, but entry level risk which they associate with a producing asset. It's a really interesting dynamic that we present.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I wanted to talk. It's only been like 6-7 weeks or so, but I just wondered, does the thinking change when you get grades like this? I'm sort of looking at, 15.9 meters at 4% copper equivalent, 58 meters at 1.2 copper equivalent, 17 meters at 3.2. And it keeps going, right? And most most people would be very pleased with those sorts of numbers. But what changes in the psyche? What changes in terms of the conversations that you are having with these institutions? Does it speed conversations up? Obviously, money potentially gets a little bit cheaper, and it also becomes available. So, and you've only, we specialise on just before Christmas, right? So it's a short time frame, but you've got to the good stuff real quick. And if you're telling me you're not taking shortcuts, then I'm intrigued as to what the feedback you're getting from the capital markets is and how we move. So there's a kind of pace and an aggressive intent. I kind of want to see what's happening next. So should I be looking at you guys now because you will continue at this pace? Or, are there just a few more hurdles you've got to get through before we can expect seeing moves?
No, so we can continue at this pace because I'm not looking for new mineralisation. I know where I'm drilling. I know where the mineralisation is. So I'm just going to keep putting out similar numbers. We put out one the other day, 60 metres at 1.2% copper equivalent. And in the past, I looked at those numbers and said, that's just nonsense. Let's wait and see what the metallurgy is. So we actually put out the last 12 months of metallurgy of actual, not lab tests or what the last 5 title holders have done on the project. We put out 12 months of production data from the mill at Cabaçal. And we know we're going to get plus 94% copper recovery. We know we're going to get probably in excess of 93% on the gold recovery. So when you look at those numbers, people are going, okay, they've got $95, $100 rock. They're going to recover $90 rock. Their OPEX is going to be, $28, $30 a ton. And then it starts to click, going, holy jingo, this is just going to get better. Because my concerns, the company's not sort of addressing my concerns. All they're doing is taking, here's the data, the production data from when it was operating. Here's the drilling. We've only done 20% of our program on Cabaçal, 30% of our program. It's just going to keep going. Like some of our best, interesting enough, some of our best EM conductors are a measure of sulphides, of copper mineralisation, I guess we could say in this instance. And some of our strongest conductors aren't in that deep stuff, that high grade at 15 metres, 4%, 5% copper equivalent. Some of our most dynamic conductors we're finding at 50 metres or 35 metres or 40 metres. So you can understand that's where we're seeing some great concentration. And now that shallow material that we're finding, that was the big surprise for me. We actually saw that there's a 1,000-metre extension to the southeast now on the project. And that was just fantastic. And that was reinterpreting old data, the geophysics. And there's a conductor, there's our drill hole, there's our EM conductor, all at 40 metres, and we're seeing a tail of them going back to the southeast, and then we're seeing it going to the northwest. So it's just companies. We had a couple of holes, weren't really great. Bugger, the next 10 we didn't hit anything. Well, we've reported up to 9. I think we're drilling coring 30 now or 31. And we're expecting what we've said to the market. We're targeting mineralisation. We're twinning or infilling or adjacent to existing holes that have mineralisation, copper gold mineralisation. We're just going to keep publishing. The upside for us is to test the stuff that's not been drilled, and that's what we think is the massive sulphide pile target of Cabaçal West.
Well, that's where it's getting to, okay? Because it's been you've had a roadmap. You've got all these historic data which you can look at and go, right, I'm going to twin that hole. I know I'm pretty likely to find some nice numbers in there, which is good. But it's what do you do with the, because you talk about a 14-kilometer mine corridor, you talk about a 10,000-meter drill program underway, and where you don't have so much data, and that's going to be quite telling in terms of the scale of this opportunity. How do you get that size? How do we, start talking about, the growth potential of this thing? And you're going to need to talk about how you fund those things when perhaps you're not going to hit great high grade numbers every single time.
Yeah, we like sort of instance of again, say our next target, Cabaçal West. We got the this soils data. We've published this in the press release a couple of weeks ago. And the profile of that soils data was actually done on a gold grid going northwest. And what was interesting is the gold grid went northwest, but on the southwestern side, they stopped because there was no gold. But when you look at the map, you can just see the copper going towards the southwest. And it's following the conductive trend down plunged or along strike towards these base, what we call them bedrock lake channel conductors. And that's just, this is what you dream about. Now, you're saying, how are we going to grow this? Well, if we don't have, like I say, in Flin Flon, they did their 100 years of mining and 60 years of geophysics. We have a belt scale, a camp scale VMS asset, and this is going to be a production asset, I feel. Maybe similar to the other ones, which are sort of multi-decade assets. We're doing everything now to make sure we go down that path, to deliver that equity growth at a mid-tier future, what we want to become as a future mid-tier valuation. So we have the asset, we've got the management team, we've got the in-country expertise, and then we've got 70,000 metres of drilling to copy it. So it's really interesting in that aspect. We don't have to worry about ground limits. Our targets are advanced. These are tertiary stage targets. It's not sort of, what are we going to do? It's no, look, that has been predefined. And that investment that we're now capitalising on, it's yet to be fully transferred in any not even a small percentage at the moment.
Okay, so how many more? It's going to be more drilling, more information to the market. So how many more meters are you going to be putting out to the market? I get that it's shallow, but how many more meters are you going to be showing up?
Well, we're going to put 8,000 meters just around Cabaçal. Okay, and then we've got 2,000 meters to test the regional targets. We told the market, or our schedule was to get our first resource statement out by the end of this year. And my gut feeling and that of Adrian is that no matter how hard we try and how much drill rigs we throw at it, because at the same time we work on some stringent health and safety criteria, there's no way that we believe this mineralised envelope will be closed off by the end of the year. And we're not going to close off a drill program to publish a resource statement. That'd just be nonsense. We are going to build a standalone asset that can take a country into potentially a multi-decade production scenario without even touching the camp scale upside of this project.
So the plan is keep drilling while it keeps giving.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Our investors are a unique opportunity, especially the guys who've been there for a while and the recent investors that come into the market, because they're really coming into an asset that don't exist. I've searched the international commodity markets. I can't give you an analogy of what Meridian has got because all the analogies are mined out, they're depleted, they're exhausted. We have a VMS. We don't have the problem of massive capex associated with trying to develop a giant portfolio from a junior company, because that's just complete nonsense, and they always fail. What we've got is an asset which is the basis of what the mid-tiers in the world were, be that Kaminko or Tech Kaminko, Falconbridge, Hudbay. They all started off with standalone assets that went for a couple of decades, like Outokumpu did. I mean, Outokumpu was a fantastic company. So it's just such a disappointment it's gone. But we've got our own Outokumpu deposit, and we've got a future with a management team and a board that just knows, okay, this is what you're going to need, this is what you're going to have to deliver, and this is the finance you're going to have to raise. And these are the schedules you're going to have to maintain to keep your equity growth. It's a really dynamic, very dynamic board. And we just see, okay, we have to deliver this. Oh, here you go. And then we're going to have to deliver this. Here you go. It's a dynamic process, but I don't have that risk profile. For our investors, you can make a decision to invest in Meridian. Okay, where am I risking my money? Well, we've got 3.7 kilometres just in one deposit, and that one's got over 400 drill holes and thousands of kilometres of geophysics and assays and metallurgical production data. You don't see a risk associated, and that's what I'm trying to get to the guys how we take responsibility in managing our risks.
Gilbert, it's a great update.
Thanks.
I want to see you back soon with similar
Yeah,
numbers.
no, I'll definitely be back.
Because I like to say, if this is drill, that works for me. So stay in touch. Let us know how you get on, okay?
Thanks, man. Appreciate having me on today. Ciao.